Welcome to the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast from Never Too Late Cafe. I'm your host, Laura Womack. Each week, we sit down for a chat with someone just like you, someone who had an idea, a passion, a dream, or sometimes just a thought, and planted that seed, watched it grow into something they wanted to share with the world. If you have an idea for a topic or someone that would be a guest for the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, where you can join our Never Too Late Cafe Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you. I have a very special guest with me today, Barbara Bradbury. Hi, Barb.
Hi, Laura.
Welcome. We're just going to dive right into your very in-depth story. So can you start by telling us where you're currently living?
Sure. I live in Scioto County near Otway. My husband and I have a farm, and we have been here for about 42 or 43 years, a 70-acre organic farm. So that's where I have been for most of my married life.
And that's in Southern Ohio?
Yes.
And is this where you're from originally, Ohio, or this part of Ohio?
I am from Ohio. I grew up in Chillicothe, in town. So I was born and raised in Chillicothe. I went to Chillicothe High School. But when I graduated from college, I did not ever live again in Chillicothe. And then, after a few years, I got married and came to Scioto County in Southern Ohio. So Chillicothe is not that far, but it is a small city and very different from where we live here.
Definitely. Well, let's talk about your farm. So the name of it, how did you come up with Hurricane Run as your name for your farm?
Well, there's a stream, a creek that runs beside the house and down. We have a half-mile driveway. So we have a little hollow. You would not see us from Thompson Hill Road, which is the road that our address is on. But this creek, Hurricane Run, it goes along the house and down along the field, along the driveway, through the woods. And it's called Hurricane Run. So we actually named it because of the creek. And after the years of living here, we realized that maybe in years back, way back when Hurricane Run might have been named, they might have called tornadoes hurricanes. It's hard to really know, if a tornado, we had tornadoes here now, certainly don't have hurricanes, but maybe way in the past, a tornado was considered a hurricane. We really don't know where that name came from, except that also when we have the spring rains, they're ferocious. That little creek, that is a small little creek, becomes raging and really does damage on the driveway sometimes. So they might have called it Hurricane Run because of the force of the water during terrible storms, but who knows?
So something else feeds into it to make the water like that, or is it the hills?
It's the hills. It's all coming off the hills into that central creek.
Wow. So how did you get interested in doing organic farming? Because that's not a typical farm in this particular area.
Well, Kevin and I did not make our living by farming. When we came here, we bought the land. We thought it was beautiful, and we decided to, set up a family, have a family here, be married. He always knew how to garden. He learned about gardening from his family and his grandparents. I didn't know anything about gardening. So, for 40 more years, we have been gardening. So we don't make our livelihood, and we didn't make our livelihood from farming. But it's a hobby. It's a way of life. It provides what we eat, and it has for decades. And we've always wanted to do it organically because we're eating the food. And we feel that's the healthier way to be, not just for ourselves, but for the planet as well, for the environment. So, so that's why we do it that way.
And then so you raise enough that for yourselves as well as to sell, and you go to a local market or
Yes, yes. And we didn't always sell. Our youngest son had between college years, he would spend summers and he did gardening and he sold and he created this email list of customers. And then when he went off to grad school, this email list was sitting there with people that he sold food to. And we thought, well, gee, we garden anyway. Why don't we just do more and have enough to sell to customers? And so that really is what started us selling to other people. They like our product. In fact, right now, we are selling the lettuce to two restaurants and the local small little Earth Candy Pharmacy store in Portsmouth. So the lettuce it's just lovely, and we clean it and it's organic. And so during the springtime, it's a really popular product.
Mm. So when you talked about your husband always knowing about gardening, I saw there was something about a farm projects book from a relative. Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about that?
Yes. When we were involved in the Ohio State, we were involved in the Ohio State University folklore program, and they brought students down to Scioto County. And we had a project with a small group of students where we realized one day that when we sell our produce and we have customers and the way we keep track of it is just a small book. And I was looking through my grandmother's um, uh, papers that she had been taken over by mother, and then my mother passed, and then I took over all the documents. I realized that my grandmother up in Ross County used the very same system that we did. And it was intriguing to me because she used a small book. She just hand wrote in there and she did her deliveries that way. And I didn't realize that. So I was kind of fascinated with that. And she would even make notes in her little book about recipes. If somebody gave her a recipe for something, she'd jot it down. And in my book, I will make little notes and jot things down when I talk with our customers. So that was just fascinating. And the folklore program that we were working with, they thought it would be a fun project for their students to look through the books, digitize the books, store the information, kind of see what similarities there were or differences. And so all of these records are now digitized and they're kept at Ohio State, but they're also kept locally at Shawnee State University. And I think maybe at Ross County Historical Society. But anyway, because that's where my grandmother's farm was. But that's just one of the folklore studies projects that we were involved with here on the farm.
So you had students, and the organization is Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, correct?
Actually, I will explain that. That's an entirely different thing.
Okay.
We are a host farm for an organization called Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, and it's WWOOF for short, WWOOF. And this is
Oh,
it's a worldwide organization. It's on the web. You can look it up. And what happens is that and you don't have to be young, but most people are young that are involved that want to learn about organic farming. They can get on the WWOOF website and see where these host farms are, like us. And if they want to be in a certain area of the country and spend some time there to learn about organic farming, they have a free place to stay, and room and board is provided by the host farm, and that would be us. We provide room and board, and in return, the woofers, they give us 5 or 6 hours of work every day. So we
wonderful.
yes, it is. And for young people, it's a really nice way to travel if they have any interest at all in learning about farming or doing outside work. They can. I mean, we had a young man from Boston University. He stopped at many wolf farms, including ours, on his way to, I think it was New Mexico. So, it's free for him. He has food that he's taken care of in that way, and he just has to work 5 or 6 hours a day. And
So do
and
they normally, sorry, do they normally stay a certain length of time, or is that sort of up to both of you? Like,
that's a good question. It is up to what the woofer, the young person, needs, and also what the farm needs. And another really good thing is that as a host farm, I can look at this person's references, because
mm-hmm,
when they leave a host farm, the farmers will review them, and that goes on the Wolf website. And they can also look at the reviews that we have as a host farm, because
mm-hmm.
the young people will put their reviews on. So it's helpful because you kind of have an idea of what you're getting, what kind of person is coming to your farm, and then they know something about us by looking at the reviews.
That's better than a hostel because you don't know who you're going to get. So do
That's
they
right.
stay in your home, or do you have a bunkhouse or
Well,
a
that's also a
barn?
good question. That varies. It varies on the farm. Some farmers do have like an outside building, maybe a bunkhouse type thing. I think some even camp. Some wolfers even camp, and they're fed. But with us, we have a large, beautiful red barn, and the upstairs of the barn is actually a living space. That we didn't do that for wolfing. We just created it when my husband built the barn. When he had teenagers, they would hang out up there. There's a pool table up there and ping pong. And so usually we will put the woofer over there in the upstairs of the barn so that there's some separation. Now, they still come in as a house. They use a restroom and they can use a kitchen, but we often have our meals together. Not always, but often.
So it's fascinating. It sounds an exciting opportunity. So do they sometimes, do you have more than one, or typically just one person, or?
Again, it depends. We sometimes get two people that come together, sometimes a guy and a girl, sometimes just two girls who are traveling or want to come to Southern Ohio to wolf. It's interesting to us. We get a lot of first time wolfers, and I'm not sure why that is, but so they don't have a review. There's nothing we can look at to review. And if that's the case, then we ask some questions so we can learn more about them. It's also important to know that they don't really have to have farm skills, not at all. We can teach them. They just have to be interested and able in working outside, you know.
Hmm. Well, that's good because they don't have to come with a whole list of I've done this and that. So that is absolutely fascinating. So um, then let's go back a little bit about the folklore. You've also connected with someone. I don't know if she was originally one of your wolf people, but Cassie, that you referred to me when we had a conversation another time, was she one of them that came there, or you just met her through the program?
Cassie, we met through Ohio State. She was
Okay.
on the staff of the Ohio State University Center for Folklore Studies. So she was the main contact we had when they established the field school, when they brought students to Scioto County. So that's how we got to know Cassie. She was very interested in wolfing and learning about what we do. She met many of our wolfers. We also had, this has nothing to do with Cassie. I'll just backtrack a second. We had a relationship with Wake Forest University for about 5 years. We were an option for their alternative spring break trip for their college students. So for 1 week during spring break for 5 years in a row, we had about 6 or 7 Wake Forest students coming here to Wolf, and they were all piled up in the barn up there together. So that was a different experience, but they thoroughly enjoyed it, and they were really helpful for us. And so, anyway, back to Cassie, she was able to meet many of them during the time that we were working with Cassie and Ohio State Folk Life program.
So, what was the university you were referring to a few minutes ago?
Wake Forest University in North Carolina.
Oh, wow. And what a great spring break instead of
Well,
like
yeah,
what you think
yeah,
of as
yeah.
wild and crazy spring breaks.
Well, and when you think about it, it's really good for college students to be able to put something on the resume showing that they gave back, that they did a service project, and
Mhm.
that they didn't just hit the beach, but they actually were willing to go and learn about organic farming and do some work for a week.
That is great. So let's go back to Cassie for a second. So since you connected, you've remained in contact. Can you talk a little bit about your connection with her now? And I know that
Sure.
she's relocated.
Yeah, yeah. Cassie relocated from Ohio State to Portsmouth, and she has started a nonprofit here and called Southern Ohio Folk Life, and I'm on the board for that nonprofit. We've been in existence maybe about 2 years. I'm not positive about that. And part of her emphasis with Southern Ohio Folk Life at this time is working with the Latina community in Scioto County and the surrounding area, to get their stories, to learn about the culture, to learn about their place in the community. And there
Mhm.
are a lot of residents here locally that are from Latina descent. So she's making inroads, and it's kind of exciting because I've met many of the those folks, and they're really happy that there's an organization wanting to know their stories and how they fit in and what their needs are. And we're going to have a festival focusing on the community. Hopefully we'll have music, we'll have food, maybe dance. There's just a lot of good that come out of this.
That sounds really cool. So I'm going to go back a little bit. So right now you're retired, would you say?
Yes, yes.
And previously you worked at Shawnee State University and you had many roles during that time. So can you go into that a little bit about your time that you were at Shawnee State?
Sure. um, I began at Shawnee State just a couple years after coming to Scioto County after I got married. And I was fortunate enough to be there 29 years. I had one extra year that I was able to put together federal and state service. So that gate that I'd already done before working at Shawnee. So that gave me my 30 years that I needed for retirement when I did retire. But I started out on a grant program and with adult education, like adult basic skills, including GED prep, and even as basic as a literacy program, helping people in the area learn to read, but also English as a second language, those kind of areas that are needed. So that's where I started out at Shawnee. And then I moved into, I believe it was admissions, and I went to high schools and I recruited for Shawnee. I went to college fairs. That was great fun. I was young. It's a good job for young people. You get to meet a lot of other people of similar age, and college nights and talking to high school kids about college is pretty fun, I think. And then after that, I'm thinking, um, well, I helped with what they call TRIO programs, which are programs that help students who don't come from a college background, help them learn the skills that they need to get into college, but also graduate from college. And that was rewarding work again at Shawnee State. So I was over many TRIO programs for maybe almost a decade during my time. And then I think I spent about 5 years as director of financial aid, which was, I probably learned the most. I'd say I learned the most that was really useful, helpful information to help college students when I was director of financial aid, because financial aid is so key to helping many students actually succeed in college. I also had a stint with human resources. I liked that a lot too. working with employment and orientation of new staff and job descriptions, just all the kind of HR work that has to be done. And then my last position actually came after the director of financial aid, and that was they created the position of dean of students, and I was asked to assume that role, and I did, and I enjoyed that as well. Although that's where the judicial aspect of college comes in. If there are students who make some bad choices and get into trouble, then you see the dean of students.
Oh,
So,
oh my.
yeah,
So you're
yeah,
like the principal's office?
yeah, yeah. So I got to know security really well, and our Department of Security was really helpful to me. But I enjoyed that role too. So I feel like I had a fortunate career at Shawnee State.
You know, I'm going to have to admit here that I thought that was like being a resident, you know, helping them get acclimated to their dorm and that sort of thing. So it's not like that.
Well, those programs fall under the dean of students. So yes, I was involved, but no, I never actually did resident hall work. But the structure was that those programs fell under my role, dean of students. But the main work of the dean of students was working with students who made bad choices.
Wow. Do you have a favorite story? A success story without mentioning names, you know, XYZ person?
I don't know if this is that's a good question, but one thing that stands out in my mind, I had a wonderful secretary. She was so sweet. She was so loyal. And unfortunately, she passed away from, I believe it was cancer. But there was this young man who got into drugs, and he was in the dean's office a lot. And one time he comes strolling up the steps and running towards me and wanted to hug me. And she didn't trust him. She didn't know what he was doing. So she walks over when he's hugging me and she's pulling his arms off of me because I think she was afraid he was high or something. But he wasn't. He wasn't. So, you know, that's not necessarily a success story, but that's something I remember mainly because it was so sweet of her, you know, looking out for me.
Yeah. Very protective. And that's a
Yeah.
good thing because sometimes you need that.
Yes.
So let's go back to your farm again. I know besides selling some of your produce and you have something with maple syrup and a whole production around that. So
We do.
that's
Yes.
fascinating.
Yeah, we've been making maple syrup for a long time. I don't know, my husband would know, but because I'm kind of the assistant here, you know, he's the director and I'm the assistant on a lot of the farm work. But at least I'd say at least 10 years. And we started just boiling in a pot, you know, over a fire way back when the kids were little, and of course they're all grown and out of the house. But I'd say we've gotten pretty serious about maple syrup making in the last 5 to 10 years, to where we actually have a sugar shack, a real pretty, I'll have to send you a picture, a real pretty little red sugar shack that has the evaporator in it, which is what holds the maple sap. And we use we have 70 acres here, so we have a lot of firewood. So we boil the sap with firewood from our land. But the process is that you need to wait until winter. Usually maple syrup making happens between mid-January and March, maybe early March here in Southern Ohio, and it depends where you are. But what you need to make maple syrup is for the sap to come down the tree. And the sap comes down when you've got really cold nights and then warmish days, to where and if it's a sunny, warmish day, that's even best. The sap will flow down the tree, and you have your little holes poked in the sugar maple tree with the little thing that the sap will run out of. Now,
Like a spigot.
Yeah, a spigot. Some people use buckets. We don't use buckets. We have a system to where we have very small tubing So we take the spigot, we attach tubing to the little spigots on a tree, and we have a whole connection in the woods, a whole bunch of lines that are all tubed together, and they're coming downhill because again we have a hollow. So the trees are up high, and those lines are coming down the hill, and the sap on those right days when you've got that cold night and a warm day, the sap is flowing down the tubes to the bottom of the hill, and we have big barrels that they flow into. So the sap flows into the big barrels, and at least once or twice a day, we will go collect the big barrel, get it into the evaporator in our little sugar shack, and we can start boiling the sap. It takes a lot of boiling. It takes about 45 gallons of sap, which is what it looks like water, just very clear liquid. So about 45 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of maple syrup. And you're just boiling. You're just boiling water away to make maple syrup.
Oh my gosh. That's quite.
That's why it's so expensive. That's why maple syrup is so expensive.
The real stuff, not the
yeah,
imitation.
Yeah.
So how long does it take for that process, tap to line to sugar shack and boil down? And
well, we start tapping the trees, putting those little spigots, the little stiles in the tree once we know the weather is starting to change. And we look at the weather. Once you see those warm days coming, late January, February, you can go ahead and tap the tree because you're going to get some warm days and your cold nights. So we don't start doing anything to the tree until mid to late January. And then that little stile, it stays in there. It stays in the tree until we're done in early March. And we take the little tap out so that the tree will heal. You've made a hole in the tree, and so you don't want to leave the spigot there. You take it out and it will heal over. And then the next year when you go back to tap again, you'll choose a different location. You can see where it healed, and you choose a different location on the tree to tap. And this reminds me, going back to Cassie, with the folklore program, she made a point of making sure some of those Ohio State students could get here to see that process. And they helped. They helped tap trees. They helped set up lines. They helped boil, feed the fire. We have to feed the fire constantly when you're actually boiling the sap. And you asked how long that can take. We could, well, I mean, we're on days when the sap is flowing and we're filling the evaporator. You can start boiling at 10 in the morning and not stop until 8 at night. So you cannot leave. You can't leave once you've got sap boiling in your evaporator.
Oh
you got to hang because you don't want to. You could burn it, and you've ruined all that work.
Oh, well, it would be good to have students and more hands to help.
Yeah.
So I know you're also involved in some other local community things, and one of them is Connex.
Yes.
And can you explain what Connex is?
Yeah. And we say connects, but it's all.
Sorry.
No. It's a tricky word. We probably could have chosen a better word. we chose connects because part of what we want to do is create connections in the community. But this is all based around physical activity, especially bicycling. But we've really expanded to hiking and kayaking, walks, especially bicycling, though. We are a local group that wants to try to encourage our community to get out, make connections with each other, and we try to make it easy by scheduling events. We have right now at this time of the year, we're having full moon kayaks at Turkey Creek Lake. If someone has a kayak or canoe at the full moon of each month here for the next 3 or 4 months, there's kayaking that we're there together. And sometimes people want to do these things, but they don't have anybody to do it with. And
Mm.
it's, you feel like, oh, I'd really like to do that, or I'd really like to go take a hike in the woods. So we're having weekly walks in the woods, and it's on the Connects Facebook page. It's advertised there. Everything's free, of course. Um, and then we're also having weekly bicycle rides right in Portsmouth, actually. And we did something new this year, and it is called, oh, it's slipping me. Well, we're meeting at a restaurant. Oh yeah, Tour Day Portsmouth or something like that. We meet at a restaurant and we ride around town, and so it promotes the restaurant that we're starting at, and that's kind of fun too. That's good for the local business. So anyway, Connects has been around since about 2014 and 15 in that name of Connects. There was a group before that, and then finally we kind of kicked it off stronger in about 2014, and we had the walking path put through at Mountain Park. That was a grant program where we received money from the Sauda Foundation and others, but the Sauda Foundation gave a special grant for that. And so we're really just trying to make positive, healthy outdoor things happen.
Now, are you connected with that word along the Ohio River in Scioto County, Portsmouth? There is the flood wall, and there was expansion with, well, changing direction, like one lane of traffic going through there, and now there's a bike and jog.
Yes. Yes, we didn't make that happen. We supported it. We clearly supported it. We were in on initial conversations, and I think even on some looking at grants. But yes, that we were also involved in that, but the city made that happen.
That is wonderful, and that's a great path through there. So are your walks that you talk about, are they daytime, nighttime, or both?
Oh, good question. During the week, they're clearly right after work.
Okay.
Yeah. So anywhere from 5:30, 6, and as the nights get longer, we can start a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they are going on right now.
It's probably good to get people before they head in the house and get settled.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about music. I know you play an instrument. So what do you play?
I play banjo, and the word play might be a strong word. I do play banjo. I took lessons after retirement, actually. I never played a string instrument. I played piano as a child, but a string instrument is very different from piano. So
Mm.
I've been playing banjo about 7 years, I guess. I took lessons for a while, and that was really, really helpful. And unfortunately, I'd like to continue taking lessons, but I don't really know of anybody locally that teaches banjo. So anyway, if you happen to know, you let me know.
I
But
don't know about local, but I do know people that do. So
well,
uh,
I will travel. I have traveled for banjo lessons, and I will travel. But I play with some friends, and Port City Pub is nice enough to let us come use their front room for practice. So about 2 times a month after work, we go down there and we have practice.
so we is
We is myself, my husband, a friend named Bill Kirby, a friend named Alan Parrott, another friend named Logan Minter, and sometimes Jessica Pacula and her husband Zach. We really invite, and sometimes people walk through while we're playing, and we say, "Do you have a guitar? Do you want to join us?" So we really do get people that just pop in and join us, because it's just we don't perform. We just do this for fun. We just get together and practice.
interesting.
Yeah.
So you've also hosted events at your farm. So
We
how
have,
is
yeah,
how's
we
it?
have. I guess you would say we had house concerts. We've had
Mhm.
maybe about 3 house concerts. We have Megan B, who was Megan Worms. She was with a band called Worms years ago, and now she goes by Megan B. She's out of the Athens area. Megan has been here 3 times. We actually had a concert during COVID outside. People separated right early on in COVID, and that was so nice because nobody could do anything back then, and
Right.
they felt safe coming here and being outside and separated. And Megan performed at that one. Um, yeah, so we actually we're due to have another one.
That sounds exciting, honestly. Sort of not really an open mic, but you have people come in to perform and it's outdoors. Do you have bonfire? Do people bring food, or how do you do that? It just sounds very inviting.
It's pretty informal, kind of word of mouth. Not huge. We've not had, well, I mean, we did have 50 people up in our rec room one time. That's a lot of people up there. That's before COVID, of course. Um,
Yeah.
and yes, I think early on we had people bring food. I think the most recent one, Jenny Richards' husband is a chef, Scott Claypool, and Scott brought food and we had food, and that was it. We didn't have other people bring it because that was the one during COVID.
Right.
So it is relaxed, low key. Um, I think we tried to collect money for that one so Megan could actually make a little money from it. Because
Sort of.
if you get it too low key, then nobody's making any money. We don't need money, but we wanted her to make some money.
Well, that's great to be appreciative of someone. Plus, she's traveling, you
Yes.
know. So, well, Barb, it's really been a lot of fun talking to you. And I know we've chatted before, but I didn't know your whole story. And so I hope to hear from you about your next event because it sounds exciting. So, well, I think our time is about to come to close, and I want to thank you again for being with us and sharing. And I look forward to hearing more about like a future time. And
Thank you. At
we're
first
going to
I
share
thought,
some.
yeah, at first I thought I have no story to tell.
Oh, absolutely.
We just do what we do, you know. But we like to get people together. Yeah, we really get a lot of joy out of that.
And it shows. And so I know that we have some pictures and a short video we're going to put on our Facebook group as well after this. So again, thanks again, Barb. And so this is the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast, sponsored by Never Too Late Cafe. And I'm Laura Womack, and I'm saying bye for now. So thank you so much, Barb, for being a guest.
It's my joy. Thanks, Laura.
Bye-bye.